What's up, guys? I'm Leah B. Jackson, and today, pro gamer Greg Idra Fields and I are going to show you the best way to play as Tassadar in Heroes of the Storm. Okay, so here we are in game with Tassadar. Tell us a little bit about him.
Tassadar is a very versatile hero. He can actually be played as a pretty decent damage dealer, but he's much better as a utility support kind of hero. And even within that role, he's very versatile. And we'll be looking at some of the things he can do. His passive is actually a very interesting, it's actually an active. You can activate it to gain vision of an area, and that reveals invis. But you see, we'll stand outside the bush here. You can actually see heroes inside the bush. You can see anything within the radius, and it's a pretty large radius whenever you activate that, and it lasts for a decent amount of time. So he's almost a hard counter to some invis assassins like Zeratul and whatnot, as they lose a big amount of stealth when he's around. Your active abilities, your Q is a protective shield. It's very simple, straightforward. You see he gains a bunch of shield HP, and that, unlike a heal, it's instantaneous, so it's great for saving allies if they're in a dangerous situation, and otherwise just makes them a little bit tankier. Your W is called Time Warp, and that creates a little bubble in which everything takes damage over time and is also significantly slowed. So that's great for setting up attacks, it's great for pushing lanes, great for slowing down people, and just, of course, doing damage in general. And then your E is the reason that Tassadar never ever dies. It's called Void Shift, and when you activate it, you become invulnerable and invisible for 2 seconds. And this is not like other invisibility spells. If you get hit by AoE damage, you do not get revealed when you use Void Shift. You are truly invulnerable. So if you activate that, you can just run away, no matter what. So as long as you have mana, as long as you keep an eye on that, you really should never die. And then the ultimate that we're going to be looking at in this guide is Force Wall, and this is one of the best utility spells in the game, I would say. It creates a line of force fields that completely block an area, and as you can see, it's actually quite large. It completely blocks off the area between these two towers, and unfortunately we are just playing against Arthur-Spot, so there's not too much to demonstrate here, but he could not have run through there if he wanted to. You can also use it to block off enemies so that he can't get there to your ally. You can use it in pretty much any number of ways. You can block off anything with it. It blocks off a lot of jungle paths, which prevents retreating. It can split armies in half during the fights, and as we can see, it's on an incredibly low cooldown, 12 seconds, so it can actually even be used multiple times in long team fights. So just one of the best utility spells in the game. It's absolutely fantastic for a number of different uses.
Cool. Well, now let's take a look at his talents and decide, which ones we should take in order to build the best Tassadar possible.
Well, as I said, he can be built damage or utility. So there's a number like Searing Attacks and Berserk and whatnot that are purely based on damage. We're not going to be looking at those because that is a viable talent tree for him, but we're just going to be looking at the utility. So for that, for the first level, you should take Time Rift. That increases the damage of your W spell by 25%. That's great for pushing. Additional damage is obviously always great against heroes, and that spell does really an underrated amount of damage. It's quite powerful. It's not solely for the slow utility. The other options at this level are pretty lackluster as well. You have Path of the Wizard, but you don't really have mana problems. You can pretty much spam your spells, and you'll never run out of mana anyway. Just keep an eye on that, make sure you have enough, but you don't need Path of the Wizard at all. And Healing Word is just generally underwhelming, not particularly effective. At level 4, I usually get Space Jump, but more and more I've been coming to the conclusion that it's not super helpful. It seems cool. It allows allies to get 20% bonus movement speed when they enter your Time Warp, your W ability, but more often than not, it just doesn't seem that effective. It's just, it sounds good in theory, but in practice it's not that helpful. Reinforced Structure is generally my other go-to at this talent level. It makes the protective shield 100% stronger and 100% longer when cast on structures. This is fantastic on any kind of pushing map, especially if you're on like Haunted Mines, defending against the big skull golem. This helps a lot in terms of mitigating the damage that does. Level 7, very straightforward. Callous Embrace is a fantastic talent. It allows 50% of the protective shield to stay on your ally even after the shield has expired. So until that damage is actually done, that shield is going to stay on top of them. So it's effectively just extra HP for a duration. And you can stack those up to 2 times. So you can just cast that on your important allies before a battle, and they'll just go into it much beefier than they normally would be. Everything else at this level is focused more on either Attack Tassadar or its Mule, which is not a very good talent. So get that 100%. Level 10, your Heroic, as we said, Force Wall. Twilight Messiah is the go-to for the damage build, but Force Wall is the fantastic utility spell that we looked at in the previous section. Just absolutely get that. At level 13, a little bit of diversity. Distortion Beam actually applies a basic slow to your auto attack, so at 25% for 1.5 seconds. This synergizes really well with your kit. You're great at catching out heroes and setting up kills, so if you can just get one auto attack off on them, then they're slowed, you can run up a little bit, cast a force wall in front of them, and then they're pretty much dead because they're isolated with your team. The other secondary option is Scryer. That's a buff to your trait, your passive. That causes it to last 3 seconds longer, and it gives you 15% increased movement speed when activated. So that is a pretty decent go-to if you're having a lot of trouble with invisibility heroes. If they have both a Zeratul and a Nova on their team, or if a Zeratul just happens to be wrecking your face, that may be an option to go to. But generally speaking, additional CC is always good. Shrink Ray is something that's actually been getting a little bit more play recently. It's great at shutting down duration-based things, so if you're against an Illidan, casting Shrink Ray on him while he has Metamorphosis up wastes a lot of very important time for him, so that's also something to consider. At level 16, a few options. I believe Dimensional Shift is by far the best option at this tier. It allows you to move faster and gain additional healing, a higher rate of healing while you are actually shifted when you use your escape ability. And that means that not only can you escape, and you're guaranteed to escape because you can move faster, you can create more distance during it, but with that healing and that regeneration, it also means that sometimes you can actually go back into the fight after running away and burning some cooldowns. So a great escape just guarantees that you're not going to die. And other things here, Rewind is okay, but he already has pretty low cooldowns. Berserk is an auto attack thing. And Impressions is actually a bit counterproductive because you can't cast spells or auto attack while you are phase shifted. So if this automatically happens, then that can prevent you from being useful to your team. And you don't really need to cast it at 15% life. You can cut it much closer than that if you are confident. So you don't really want to get that one. It can be kind of counterproductive, but Dimensional Shift is great. And then at level 20, two options, really. Resurgence is always great. He has very low cooldown, so he's always going to be effective when he comes back. It's not like he's going to burn an ultimate and then be useless when he respawns. But Force Gate is also fantastic. 25% increased range, even better for setting up catches for just casting from a distance. Very good in general. But the bigger thing is it no longer blocks allied pathing, so it walls off your opponents but not your allies, which is just game-breakingly good in team fights. You can completely cut your opponents in half without disrupting your enemies at all. So choose between Force Gate and Resurgence depending on the map. If it's a base race kind of situation, then maybe Resurgence is the better option, but normally Force Gate is going to be the go-to.
Okay, so it seems like while you could go for damage as Tassadar, you definitely want to go more for support, because not only is it incredibly viable, but it's also super helpful for your team.
Absolutely, yeah.
So now that we have the build down, how do you play as Tassadar effectively?
He's actually pretty simple. There's a lot he can do. He is a utility hero. It tends to be kind of complicated. He's really not. You just use your spells the way it seems like they should be used. Your shield is great for baiting. If you see one of your allies getting kind of low, he's in the middle of a battle or something, just wait for him to get low. The enemy will tend to dive on him, try and secure that kill. Then he can just run away with your shield on him, survive, and pull them into a bad position. And just generally use the shield as you would to protect your allies. Remember to stack it beforehand as soon as you get Callous Embrace, as that's very, very powerful. Time Warp, great for setting up kills. One thing that is a little bit underestimated for is pushing. Great pushing power. Cast it on top of the ranged and the caster minion, and it'll push a wave pretty quickly. Phase shift or dimensional shift, obviously that gets you out alive. Use that whenever you're getting too low and you think you might die. Be sure to keep an eye on your mana costs. Make sure that you can afford to do that. And then Force Wall can be used in any number of ways. Split teams in half during team fights, catch fleeing enemies, trap teams within your big AoE spells. Pretty much anything you can imagine for it can be used for. It's a very, very versatile spell. So, yeah, there's not a whole lot too complicated about him. Just use your spells to the best of their abilities. And playing against him is kind of the same way. It's really hard to counterplay someone as versatile as Tassadar. He's just always going to be around. He's always going to have a good, very helpful impact for his team. The thing is, just be aware of what he can do. Don't dive after those heroes that could end up being shielded and get away. Don't sacrifice yourself for that. Watch out for the force walls. Try not to fight in very tight areas. Fighting in the jungle against the Tassadar team is suicidal half the time. So be very, very careful about that. Never dive after him. He's always going to escape. Don't commit too much to killing him. If he is in the middle of a battle, you can lock him down, especially if you can silence or stun him during the time where he would phase shift away, then go for it. But otherwise, don't commit too much to him, because you're probably not going to kill him, and you're just going to end up wasting time and cooldowns. So just try and mitigate what he does, but he's a very high-tier hero. He's possibly the best support in the game right now, so it's hard to completely take him out of it.
And there you have it, guys. But remember, this is our best way to play, and we want to hear yours in the comments.
Be sure to head over to Greg's Twitch channel for more pro tips, and for everything Heroes of the Storm, stay tuned to IGN.